Disney versus DeSantis.
Okay, Robert. I'm trying to follow it. This is like a tennis match of legal proceedings. Now Disney is suing DeSantis because DeSantis or some board of directors revoked a special a special development permit that they were having. What is going on here?
So this goes back to many years ago. Disney, the state of Florida, created a special district so that Disney basically could govern itself. So it didn't have to go to the city or the county for all kinds of things, including permitting, etc. Walt Disney himself planned on actually establishing idolized model cities. Those model cities never happened. They created these fake cities that they used to vote in Disney, the board members of this special district. This special district had the legal power to build a nuclear power plant. That's how crazy that was. All right, so it mostly the biggest power it gave them, other than permitting power to control their real estate, it also gave them policing and firepower in select circumstances too, so they could govern a lot of the crazy things that might be happening or conspiracies that might be getting covered up at Disney. We'll get into one of those conspiracies they were covering up that led to a lawsuit in New York. But according to the allegations, but basically this, but most importantly, allowed them to control taxes and allow them to get bonds, tax-free bonds on favorable privilege terms. So they could raise capital in ways that was very preferential to Disney. And they could control the taxes correspondent to it. So that was the two big everyday financial gifts. Disney comes out and attacks the quote-unquote, they call it the Don't Say Gay bill. This is the bill to not sexualize your 5-year-olds in public schools. That's what the bill actually was. It had nothing to do with Don't Say Gay. And so that led to a lot of public controversy. Florida, under Governor DeSantis in the legislature, originally talked about just no more special district. Turn that over to the county. Ultimately, he backed off of that. And instead, he created a new special district instead and changed the board members. Some of us were critical of that because we were for just no special preference. Treat them the same as Universal and everybody else. But DeSantis ended up going halfway. Didn't satisfy Disney. Disney saw the old legislative special district was going to disappear and a new one was going to come in. All these are creatures of the state. They're extensions of the state. So it's just the state changing how the state functions. Instead of this particular district, we'll have this particular district. Instead of these people on the board, it's going to be those people on the board. Literally, that's it. They inherited the bond obligations, all the rest. But what was key was before Disney was able to control the board through their fake cities where they had voting power. So they didn't like that a new board was going to take over. So they had the old board, the district that was about to get wiped out, sign development deals with Disney that try to create all these covenants to prohibit the new board from having any power. So Professor Jonathan Turley called it a crock. So until I did a deeper dive, I wasn't sure because this wasn't my area of expertise. It is, however, as it randomly turns out, because I know Legal Mindset from his commentary on Nick Rekieta's channel. And it turns out what Legal Mindset used to do is bond deals with special districts in Florida. So this is exactly like his area. So he understood this area intricately. And he kept saying from the get-go, and I did do a deep dive on all his videos over this past week, from the get, thanks to the board members, that they tipped me off that he was doing a deep dive at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And what he was saying was Disney is insane. And while the institutional legal bogus academics and people in the press, you had Reuters headlines, legal experts say Disney will crush DeSantis, all this kind of garbage. While Turley was saying, and Legal Mindset was saying anybody who knows this area knows that Disney is gambling with their financial future and a risk of foreclosure. They got no chance to win any of these. So Disney does this secret covenant deal until the king changes centuries in the future, all that nonsense. The old rule against perpetuities. They're trying to get around that because there's law about development deals in Florida, what you can do when it's binding, when it's not binding, and they were trying to piggyback off of that. New board comes in and says that the old board the prior legislative district that doesn't even exist anymore, didn't have the legal authority to do that. And so those contracts are void ab initio. and we'll re-examine the development deals and what we'll do and what we won't do. But those are void. Within an hour, Disney was down in federal court, and we're going to sue in state court, of course, saying this violates our constitutional rights under the contract clause, the takings clause, the due process clause, the free speech clause. Their claims are frivolous. There's no other. All the legal analysis you're hearing out there is utter garbage, other than legal mindset and those people. All the pro-Disney legal mindset is, all the pro-Disney people are full of garbage. Legal mindset is backed up not only by his expertise, but his arguments. The contracts clause, here's the big problem Disney has. None of this is really directly with Disney. Like, they want to say DeSantis discriminated against us. Look at all these statements. But all the state of Florida actually did was change itself, right? It changed, we're going to have this legislative district be an extension of us. Instead, we're going to have this legislative district be an extension of us. They did nothing directly to Disney, right? So them going after DeSantis, that they have a huge problem. They were the third party impacted by all of this, but they weren't supposed to be running that board to begin with. So and this is why they're writing this, they're doing this real thin, careful deal, because when they issued all those bonds, they said this was an independent state-created entity that they didn't have, that wasn't for private pecuniary purposes. So they can't really sue and say the bond. In fact, they don't want the bond set aside. They don't want the new entity set aside. They don't want the new board set aside, because if any of that happens, their bonds can be immediately called, and they can foreclose on Disney World. They can just shut down Disney World to collect on the bonds. So that's why they're trying to say, well, no, we just want these contracts to be that we cut it at the last second to be these holy contracts. This is little Vatican City in the middle of Florida, what Disney tried to carve out. And they're holy contracts, constitutionally protected, and nobody can ever change them. And the problem is that, first of all, under the development laws themselves, the contracts don't conform to the development laws. They violate the laws. So they didn't have the authority to do it. There are contracts that, by definition, under Florida state law, can be set aside anyway for a bunch of other reasons. And Florida, they weren't directly targeted. The entity is what changed. So they don't have a First Amendment claim. They can't say it's purely arbitrary because they were getting special preferential treatment in the first place. No longer, you don't have a constitutional right to preferential treatment. That's what their argument is. The contract clause will go nowhere. The takings clause will go nowhere. The due process purely arbitrary claim will go nowhere. And the free speech claims will go nowhere. The only shot they have is they got an Obama federal appointed judge. And some of those judges have been issuing insane orders, especially in Florida. And so maybe they'll get another insane judge issuing another insane order, but it'll be set aside by the 11th Circuit because of the consequences. If Disney has a constitutionally protected right to preferential treatment, this creates problems for every level of government in the entire country, that it will basically freeze the ability to do development deals, freeze the ability to do real estate deals, freeze the ability to do bond deals, freeze the ability to do special legislative districts. It will be disastrous. And once a judge figures this out, then they're going to, aside from the fact that the law doesn't support them, the policy consequences are way too disastrous. And that's why Disney's case is a frivolous case that should, by an honest judge, intellectually honest judge, get thrown out. At some point, that's what will happen. Whether it's the 11th Circuit, whether it's the Supreme Court, Disney is going to lose bad in Florida, and they're going to lose market share and other value because of how bad they're going to lose legally.
But Robert, David French thinks that DeSantis should lose. To understand why Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida should lose in his quest to punish Disney for the high crime of publicly disagreeing with Ron DeSantis, it is first necessary to talk about TOTRA. You can go read this article, people, just to get to the end here.
The problem is nothing was done directly by DeSantis to Disney. This was a special legislative district that Disney legally promised its bondholders it did not personally control, that these bonds were not for their pecuniary, private, personal gain, that it was solely, so that's the problem. DeSantis never harmed Disney. He had an impact that Disney no longer got preferential treatment because of its illicit, unauthorized control of a state entity. Imagine saying that you'd bribed your way into the Defense Department, and the president took away that the person who you were bribing, and saying, You took away my constitutionally contractual right to bribe them and get special treatment. That's how ludicrous Disney's claim is. Anybody supporting it, you should never listen to again. Anyone who says it's credible legally, you can ignore for the rest of your natural born days. Sooner or later, this case will be thrown out. It's only a matter of when and where it gets thrown out. And when it does, Disney's going to lose monetary value on the stock market because they're going to wonder what's going wrong with Disney, that they're getting into these needless political controversies. And right now, if that board wanted to, that board could consider calling the bonds immediately and foreclosing on Disney World. Imagine what that would do to Disney financially. That's why this is dumb. That's why this is dangerous. And ultimately, they'll lose.
All right. The prediction is in, people. So we'll compare this to David French's assessment, which you can all read and enjoy reading.